"Get your hands where I can see them, sir," the officer said, his voice cutting through the late afternoon air like a blade too sharp for the quiet street it landed on. And Samuel Carter paused mid-step, the soft scrape of his worn leather shoe against the pavement the only sound that answered at first as the world around him seemed to hold its breath. The distant hum of a passing pickup truck, the faint rustle of leaves in a dry Texas breeze, the golden sunlight reflecting off storefront windows and settling gently across his shoulders like something warm and undeserved. And he slowly lifted his gaze, not startled, not angry, just steady. The kind of steady that came from years measured not in comfort, but in endurance. His right hand still loosely holding the small paper bag from the corner grocery store, the faint outline of a loaf of bread pressing against the thin paper. His left hand hanging at his side where the cuff of his faded jacket brushed against a small, hidden weight inside the pocket, something metallic, something old, something earned, and across from him stood Officer Ryan Cole, young, uniform crisp, posture rigid, one hand resting near his belt, the other gesturing with impatience as if time itself belonged to him. His eyes scanning Samuel not with curiosity, but with assumption, as though the conclusion had already been written before the first word was spoken. And a second patrol car idled nearby, its engine humming low, a subtle vibration. Beneath the quiet tension building in the air, while a few bystanders lingered just far enough away to pretend they weren't watching, their reflections flickering in the glass of a nearby diner window. And Samuel inhaled slowly, the kind of breath that settled deep in the chest, grounding, measured, as if he had done this before in another life under a different sky, where the air carried dust and heat and something far heavier than suspicion. And he placed the paper bag gently on the hood of the patrol car without being told, the crinkle of the paper louder than it should have been, louder than the murmurs beginning to ripple through the small gathering crowd. And then, carefully, deliberately, he raised both hands, palms open, not in surrender but in clarity, his movements calm, almost ceremonial, as though respect was something he offered even when it wasn't returned. And Officer Cole stepped closer, boots firm against the asphalt, his shadow stretching long across Samuel's shoes, overlapping, claiming space. And for a moment neither man spoke, the silence thick, stretched thin by the weight of unspoken judgment. And somewhere in the distance a car door slammed, echoing faintly, pulling a few more eyes toward the scene, while the sunlight shifted just enough to catch the edge of Samuel's collar, revealing a small, worn patch stitched into the inside lining of his jacket, barely visible, faded from time but still there. And Samuel's fingers twitched ever so slightly, not from fear, not from hesitation, but from memory, as if something old had stirred beneath the surface, something carried quietly for years without acknowledgement. And Officer Cole tilted his head, studying him, his expression tightening with a confidence that hadn't yet been tested. "You live around here?" he asked, the question less an inquiry and more an accusation dressed in casual tone. And Samuel's eyes met his, calm, unwavering, the kind of gaze that didn't challenge but didn't retreat either. And for a brief second, something shifted in the air, subtle, almost invisible, like the moment before a storm decides whether to pass or break. And Samuel spoke, his voice low, steady, carrying a quiet weight that didn't need to be raised to be heard. "I've been here longer than you think," he said, and the words settled between them. Simple, unadorned, but anchored in something deeper than the moment, something that neither the badge nor the uniform could immediately measure. And as the wind moved again, brushing lightly against the hem of his jacket, the faint outline of the metal in his pocket pressed once more against the fabric, unseen, unnoticed, waiting. Samuel stepped back from the patrol car, his breathing steady, the quiet hum of the city around him contrasting sharply with the tension frozen between himself and the officer, the late afternoon sunlight glinting off the pavement, catching the edges of his jacket in warm highlights, a soft breeze lifting the collar slightly, carrying with it the faint scent of gasoline from a passing delivery truck and the subtle fragrance of dry grass from a nearby park. His eyes scanning the street, noting the small details of a city he had walked for decades, the uneven sidewalk, the scattered leaves, the flickering neon of a convenience store sign, each element familiar, grounding, reminding him that he had weathered more than this moment. And yet he remained conscious of the present, of the officer, of the silent witnesses watching from the edge of the street. A young couple leaning against a brick wall, a man adjusting the brim of his hat as he paused mid-stride, the world holding its breath with them, and Samuel's fingers brushed lightly against the smooth metal of the medal hidden in his jacket pocket, the memory of distant deserts, of distant nights under foreign stars, of missions completed and promises kept, of honor and patience. And the weight of those memories lent his posture a quiet dignity that even the officer could not immediately measure. He exhaled slowly, releasing the tension held unconsciously in his shoulders, allowing a measured calm to emanate from him. Subtle, yet perceptible, a presence that filled the space between the two men without words, and he nodded once. A simple gesture acknowledging the world around him, the sun shifting slightly, casting long, soft shadows across the street, brushing the worn asphalt and the lines of paint that had faded over time. And in that quiet nod, there was history, there was resilience, there was the invisible proof of years lived with integrity, a life of service, a life of choices that demanded patience and clarity. And Samuel took a single step toward the curb, his shoes pressing lightly against the concrete, worn but cared for, and he let his gaze linger on the officer, not in challenge, not in defiance, but in the calm assurance that comes from knowing who you are and what you have endured. And the crowd began to shift subtly, some stepping back, some leaning forward slightly, all drawn to the silent authority Samuel carried effortlessly, and the officer's hand moved instinctively toward his belt, tension threading through his posture. A microcosm of authority suddenly uncertain, the distant sound of a school bell carried faintly across the street, mingling with the low murmur of traffic, the occasional bark of a dog somewhere out of sight, a soft gust lifting a discarded paper cup from the gutter, sending it skittering across the asphalt, the day unspooling around them in slow, deliberate motion, and Samuel, feeling the rhythm of it all, the pulse of life continuing despite the confrontation, allowed himself a small, measured smile, a recognition of the ordinary world persisting beyond the moment. And the sunlight caught the rim of his glasses, tracing the lines of his face with golden highlights, emphasizing the steady set of his jaw, the calm strength in his eyes, a presence that was both unassuming and formidable, as if each step he took carried the weight of unseen decades. And he adjusted the strap of the bag at his side, ensuring its contents rested securely, a small loaf of bread, a package of eggs, simple things that tied him to the everyday, grounding him in the tangible world even as the larger, unspoken stakes hung suspended between him and the uniformed figure. And in that quiet, Samuel's past and present converged, the street, the sunlight, the metal in his pocket, the hum of the city, all aligning to create a tableau of resilience, patience, and unwavering dignity. And for a brief moment, time seemed to pause, the air thick with anticipation. The ordinary street transformed into a stage upon which experience, wisdom, and quiet authority were silently displayed, every detail observed, every sound noted, every shadow accounted for. Samuel's presence commanding a respect that had not been requested but could not be denied, a testament to the life he had led and the strength that came not from force, but from enduring the world with unwavering composure and silent integrity. Officer Ryan Cole shifted slightly, the sunlight glinting off the polished badge on his chest, casting a fleeting reflection across the sidewalk as he tried to maintain the impression of authority while a subtle uncertainty crept into his posture, the quiet tension hanging between them like a delicate thread ready to snap. And Samuel Carter remained still, his shoulders relaxed but his eyes scanning the familiar street, noting the small irregularities in the pavement, the chipped paint on the crosswalk sign, the faint outline of tire tracks in the asphalt from morning deliveries, the distant buzz of a lawn mower somewhere 2 blocks down, and the occasional flutter of a newspaper corner caught by the breeze, each detail grounding him, a silent testament to decades of observation and patience. His fingers brushing against the metal tucked safely in his jacket pocket, the cold metal a familiar weight, a reminder of service rendered and endurance earned, the folds of his jacket moving gently with the rhythm of his breath, unnoticed by the officer but perceptible to Samuel, a language of movement that spoke volumes in silence. And as the minutes stretched, the murmurs of the few bystanders, a pair of teenagers leaning on a low brick wall, a woman adjusting her shopping bag strap, a man tightening his shoelace, all blended into a soft background hum, framing the scene without intruding. The air carrying the faint scent of roasted coffee from a nearby cafe, the warm aroma mingling with the dry heat rising from the asphalt, forming a sensory layer that reminded Samuel of afternoons long past in similar neighborhoods. Streets he had walked countless times, corners where he had paused to tie a knot, to adjust a strap, to consider the small details of a city that moved on without him, yet which he understood intimately. And the officer, shifting weight from one foot to the other, felt the quiet authority emanating from Samuel without words, a presence built not from loud commands or visible displays, but from years of accumulated experience, dignity, and the invisible strength of a life that had been measured in deeds. And Samuel allowed his gaze to drift slightly toward the horizon, the sun lowering, the shadows lengthening, a subtle shift in the color of the sky from bright azure to a warmer hue tinged with soft oranges and pinks, a reminder that the day was winding down, that moments of tension would pass, that patience and calm were as important as action. And he exhaled slowly, a controlled, measured breath that seemed to carry the weight of time itself, a signal not to the officer, but to the world that he was fully present, fully aware, and fully unshaken. And the small paper bag at his side shifted slightly as he adjusted his grip, the rustle of the paper almost imperceptible yet echoing in the stillness, a reminder of the ordinary responsibilities that continued even amidst extraordinary circumstances. And the faint shimmer of the metal caught another ray of sunlight, glinting briefly, almost as if acknowledging the moment, while the sounds of the city persisted softly in the background, the distant honk of a car horn, the fluttering of a bird taking flight, the gentle clatter of a delivery truck door closing, all forming a subtle symphony of life going on, unnoticed but undeniable. And Samuel's eyes returned to Officer Cole, steady, unflinching, conveying an understanding that transcended words, a calm presence that neither challenged nor conceded, a silent demonstration of authority rooted in experience and quiet confidence, the tension between them holding, stretching, waiting for the next move, a dance of observation and awareness, the ordinary transformed into a stage where patience, presence, and dignity held as much power as any uniform or badge. And the street around them seemed to hold its breath, the heat of the day, the low hum of traffic, and the soft sway of leaves in the breeze creating a tableau of anticipation, every element aligning in silent acknowledgement of Samuel Carter's unspoken command over the moment, a presence that invited recognition without demanding it. And the afternoon sun continued its descent, casting long, measured shadows across the pavement, touching each element of the scene, the sidewalk cracks, the subtle undulations in the road, the edges of the patrol car, framing the space around Samuel with golden light, as if the city itself had paused to honor the quiet strength emanating from him, the stillness, the composure, and the invisible weight of years lived with honor. Samuel shifted his weight slightly, the leather of his shoes creaking softly against the uneven pavement, and his hand drifted subconsciously toward the small metal tucked beneath the inside lining of his jacket, a weight both familiar and reassuring. The afternoon sun catching the edges of his graying hair, casting a gentle halo that contrasted with the hard lines of the patrol car and the bright reflective strips on the officer's uniform. The air warm with the faint scent of asphalt and freshly cut grass from a nearby park, carrying a sense of normalcy into the heightened tension, while a few pedestrians paused at a distance, their conversations low and hesitant, eyes darting briefly toward the unfolding scene before moving along. And Samuel's gaze swept across the familiar street, noting the subtle changes that had accumulated over years, the chipped paint on the traffic sign, the gentle slope in the crosswalk, the fading marks where tires had rubbed against the curb, details that grounded him, that reminded him of the rhythm of his life in this neighborhood, each sound, the distant hum of a delivery truck, the occasional bark of a dog, the flutter of a newspaper caught by the breeze, blending into a soft symphony that framed the scene without intruding, the metal in his pocket pressing lightly against his chest as if urging him to remain composed, to embody the quiet authority of a life well lived. And he took a deep breath, letting the warmth of the sunlight fill his lungs, the rise and fall of his chest slow and deliberate, a measured cadence that contrasted with the subtle twitch of the officer's hand, a small but telling sign of uncertainty in the young man's posture. Samuel's eyes softened, registering the officer's tension not with derision, but with a quiet empathy born of decades of experience, the kind of understanding that comes from having seen the world from multiple vantage points, having walked streets in distant cities, having carried responsibility beyond personal recognition. And in that moment, the sunlight caught a glint from the metal, illuminating the worn engraving, the faint curves of lettering that told a story of endurance, service, and honor, an invisible testament to character and resilience. While the wind lifted slightly, teasing the collar of Samuel's jacket, brushing against his sleeve, and the officer shifted again, boots pressing into the asphalt with a subtle, almost unconscious adjustment, trying to reclaim composure as the weight of Samuel's presence pressed quietly, insistently, a reminder that authority is not measured solely by uniform or badge, but by presence, by poise, by the unwavering strength of someone who has endured, understood, and moved through life with steady conviction. And the street seemed to pause with them. The ordinary noises, the soft hiss of a passing bicycle tire, the gentle rustle of leaves, the distant conversation of a child and parent, forming a backdrop that made every micro-movement, every glance, every subtle gesture between Samuel and the officer resonate more deeply. And he tilted his head slightly, allowing his eyes to meet the officer's, calm but unwavering, conveying decades of lived experience without uttering a single word. His body relaxed, hands open at his sides, the soft weight of the paper bag containing simple groceries grounding him in the tangible, ordinary world, even as the encounter took on an extraordinary significance. And the warmth of the afternoon sun highlighted the textures of the street, the reflective strips on the patrol car, the folds of Samuel's jacket, the faint creases in his worn shoes, each element framed in quiet cinematic detail, the slow cadence of his breathing, the subtle movements of his body, the precise, controlled alignment of his stance, all coalescing to project an authority and dignity that neither shouted nor demanded attention, but commanded it nonetheless. The city around them continuing its rhythm quietly, traffic flowing in soft, steady waves, distant voices fading in and out like a gentle ambient score, the moment stretching, charged yet serene, with Samuel standing as a beacon of composed resolve, the metal in his pocket catching another ray of sunlight, gleaming briefly, imperceptibly, a small but profound reminder of sacrifice, honor, and the enduring strength of character. And he exhaled slowly, a controlled, deliberate release of breath that seemed to anchor him, solidify his presence, and fill the space with the subtle, undeniable weight of someone who has seen and endured much, projecting calm, integrity, and an unspoken authority into every fiber of the quiet street scene around him. The tension between Samuel Carter and Officer Ryan Cole heightened subtly, a silent push and pull that needed no words. The warm late afternoon sun now casting elongated shadows across the cracked sidewalks, highlighting every texture and detail of the small urban street, from the scuff marks on the patrol car tires to the faded yellow stripes of the crosswalk, while the faint rustle of leaves in the breeze carried distant sounds of children playing in a nearby yard, a soft hum of city life that contrasted sharply with the heightened stillness surrounding the two men. And Samuel adjusted the paper bag in his hand, the faint crinkle of the wrapping almost inaudible yet grounding, a reminder of ordinary tasks continuing even amidst this charged moment. His eyes never leaving the officer, steady, calm, a presence measured and deliberate, projecting decades of experience without a word. While the officer's posture remained rigid, his hand subtly shifting near his belt, a microcosm of control subtly cracking under the weight of Samuel's composed authority. And Samuel allowed himself a slow, deliberate step forward, a movement that neither challenged nor yielded, but carried the quiet confidence of someone who had endured countless unseen battles, the sunlight glinting off his glasses, illuminating the lines of his face etched with time and experience. The soft folds of his jacket moving gently with the rhythm of his breath, and in that small adjustment, the crowd of observers, a handful of pedestrians lingering at a safe distance, felt the presence of calm command, their whispers lost in the soft cadence of the moment, the distant clatter of a delivery truck, the faint honk of a passing car, and the gentle cooing of a bird overhead forming a subtle soundtrack, grounding the scene in reality. And Samuel's hand brushed once more against the hidden metal, the smooth metal cold and reassuring, carrying the weight of years of service, sacrifice, and quiet dignity. And the officer, eyes narrowing slightly, caught the glint without fully understanding its significance, a hesitation creeping into his stance, subtle but perceptible, as if the invisible authority emanating from Samuel had briefly shifted the balance, while the afternoon light softened against the edges of buildings, washing the street in warm hues that contrasted with the stark uniform and polished boots of the patrol car, casting a gentle halo that highlighted the calm in Samuel's posture, the deliberate, patient cadence of his breathing, the slight sway of his shoulders, each micro-movement a quiet testament to resilience, to unspoken knowledge and experience. And as the seconds stretched, the sounds of the city, distant voices, the rustle of newspapers in the wind, the soft shuffle of feet, created a canvas upon which the silent interaction was painted, the ordinary and the extraordinary coexisting in delicate balance. And Samuel tilted his head ever so slightly, his gaze unwavering, yet soft, communicating patience, history, and quiet understanding, projecting strength not through force but through presence. And Officer Cole's movements became more measured, a subtle awareness that this was no ordinary encounter, that the man before him carried an authority far deeper than the badge on his chest. And Samuel adjusted the strap of the paper bag lightly, a deliberate, grounding gesture, connecting him to the tangible world even as the air between them vibrated with the unspoken weight of integrity, dignity, and experience. And the long shadows of the afternoon stretched across the pavement, touching every surface, highlighting every texture, every fold of clothing, every edge of the sidewalk, framing the scene with a cinematic clarity. While Samuel exhaled slowly, the controlled rhythm of his breath resonating in the quiet, filling the space with a subtle, undeniable presence, a composed, patient authority that drew attention without demanding it, every small gesture carrying the unspoken weight of a life well lived, each detail, a rusted curb, a faint crack in the pavement, the glint of a metal, the warm sunlight across his shoulders, combining to create a tableau of calm command and enduring dignity, a demonstration that strength and authority could be conveyed quietly, without words, without confrontation. And the city continued its soft, measured rhythm around them, carrying the ordinary along while the extraordinary unfolded in the subtle exchange of presence, poise, and silent command between Samuel Carter and Officer Ryan Cole. The sunlight had shifted lower in the sky, casting long, soft shadows across the pavement, the golden hue washing over Samuel Carter's shoulders and illuminating the fine lines etched into his face, each one a silent testament to the years of endurance, service, and quiet dignity that had defined his life. The gentle breeze carrying with it the faint sense of blooming jasmine from a nearby garden and the subtle aroma of roasted coffee from a distant cafe, blending into the ambient hum of the city that continued around them, unnoticed yet present, while the faint rustle of leaves and the distant murmur of traffic created a soft, living soundtrack to the stillness between Samuel and Officer Ryan Cole. And Samuel allowed his gaze to drift momentarily toward the horizon, noting the way the light played across the edges of the buildings, highlighting every texture, every brick and window frame, each element grounded in reality, yet forming a cinematic tableau of quiet anticipation. And he felt the weight of the small metal in his jacket pocket once more, the smooth metal pressing lightly against his chest as a tactile reminder of decades of service, of promises kept and duties fulfilled. And the officer shifted slightly, a subtle micro-movement betraying an uncertainty that had begun to creep into his rigid stance, his hand brushing near his belt without conscious thought, while Samuel remained steady, the calm of his presence filling the space, projecting an authority built not on force but on experience, patience, and quiet strength. And he took a deliberate breath, slow and measured, feeling the rhythm of the city, the soft cadence of passing footsteps, the gentle squeak of a distant bicycle, the hum of a car engine, fading down the street, all merging into a subtle symphony of life that framed the encounter without intruding. And the paper bag at Samuel's side shifted slightly as he adjusted his grip, the rustle of the wrapping soft but audible, anchoring him in the ordinary tasks of the day, reminding him that life continued even in moments of heightened tension. And as the shadows lengthened, the sunlight catching the rim of his glasses and tracing the lines of his face, he allowed a small, controlled exhalation to escape, a gesture that seemed to carry the accumulated weight of years and experiences, of lessons learned and patience earned, projecting a silent reassurance to those around him. The gentle rise and fall of his chest, the subtle sway of his shoulders, the precise alignment of his stance, all conveying an unspoken narrative of calm command and quiet resilience. And the officer, sensing the subtle shift, paused, his gaze flicking to the metal glinting faintly beneath Samuel's jacket, a moment of recognition passing unspoken, and Samuel's eyes softened slightly, acknowledging the officer without confrontation, without judgment, a presence that spoke volumes through quiet composure, the ordinary and the extraordinary merging in a delicate balance as the day continued to wane, the warm glow of sunlight bathing the scene, emphasizing textures, shadows, and the small, deliberate movements of a man whose life had been defined by steadfast dedication and unwavering integrity. And for a brief moment, the city seemed to pause, the hum of distant traffic, the rustle of leaves, the faint voices of pedestrians all blending into the background, leaving only the quiet, deliberate presence of Samuel Carter, his hands relaxed at his sides, his posture calm, every movement a testament to experience and quiet authority, the metal a hidden symbol of honor and endurance, the sunlight highlighting its contours, and the street, bathed in the warm glow of the lowering sun, held its breath with him, capturing the subtle tension, the calm anticipation, and the profound dignity that emanated from every measured gesture, every micro-expression, every controlled breath, a cinematic stillness that invited reflection and silently commanded respect. The quiet of the street shifted subtly as the sound of a vehicle approaching in the distance drew every eye, the low hum of the engine vibrating softly against the asphalt, mixing with the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze, and Samuel Carter remained poised, the warmth of the afternoon sun highlighting the soft silver in his hair and the careful lines of experience etched across his face. The paper bag in his hand shifting slightly as he adjusted his stance, not in tension but in readiness. A calm, deliberate acknowledgement of the approaching presence, and the hum grew steadily louder, the tires rolling over the uneven pavement with a subtle rhythm that seemed to synchronize with the quiet pulse of Samuel's breath, the shadows lengthening further, stretching across the sidewalks and the faint cracks in the road, emphasizing every detail with golden clarity, while Officer Ryan Cole shifted uneasily, his hand moving almost imperceptibly toward his belt, a sign of the uncertainty that had begun to creep into his posture, the authority he had relied on momentarily faltering under the quiet command of Samuel's presence. And then the vehicle emerged fully into view, a sleek black SUV glinting in the sunlight, moving with an almost silent precision, the engine purring softly, and as it came to a stop beside the sidewalk, the door opened with a gentle, controlled motion, and Marcus Carter stepped out, the light glinting off the polished edge of his watch and the subtle lines of his tailored jacket, every movement deliberate, measured, the calm intensity of a man who had faced challenges far greater than this moment evident in the set of his jaw and the controlled cadence of his breath. And Samuel turned slightly to acknowledge him with a subtle nod, a quiet gesture of recognition and trust, the wind lifting faintly, brushing the folds of his jacket, carrying the faint scent of warm asphalt and distant flowers, grounding the moment in tangible reality, while Marcus's eyes scanned the street, taking in the details with a practiced precision, the sunlight catching the small glint of Samuel's hidden metal. As he did, a soft recognition passing between them without words, and Officer Cole's posture stiffened further, the weight of unspoken authority settling around him as he realized that the quiet presence he had tried to dominate was reinforced by another layer of experience and command. Samuel's hand brushing lightly against the metal once more, a subtle, grounding touch. A reminder of years of discipline and service that now extended beyond his own being. While Marcus stepped closer, his shadow stretching across the sunlit pavement, intersecting with Samuel's in a visual acknowledgement of connection and history. The gentle hum of the city continuing around them, distant footsteps, the soft shuffle of tires on the road, the occasional distant voice of a pedestrian creating a layered auditory backdrop, and Samuel exhaled slowly, the movement measured and deliberate, radiating quiet confidence and authority, while Marcus's presence alone seemed to alter the energy in the street. A silent assertion that strength could be communicated through composure, through history, through quiet, deliberate presence rather than overt action, and the golden light of the late afternoon sun highlighted the contours of both men, emphasizing the depth of experience and the unspoken understanding that had developed between them. The small details of the street, the cracks in the pavement, the edges of the sidewalk, the subtle shine on the patrol car, forming a cinematic frame around the scene. Every micro-movement, every breath, every shift in weight, conveying volumes without a single word being exchanged. The calm authority of Samuel reinforced and acknowledged, the young officer observing, caught between his own training and the undeniable resonance of lived experience and unspoken command radiating from the two men before him. The city's ordinary sounds, the distant hum of traffic, the flutter of a newspaper corner in the breeze, the faint laughter of children in the distance, all blending seamlessly into the backdrop, accentuating the extraordinary subtlety of the exchange. And Samuel, adjusting his posture, standing tall yet relaxed, the small paper bag in his hand a symbol of daily life intersecting with profound presence, the metal in his pocket reflecting a final ray of sunlight, a quiet emblem of honor, endurance, and the unshakable strength of character. While Marcus's eyes met his, a silent affirmation, a recognition of history and resilience, and the street seemed to hold its breath. The ordinary world blending with the extraordinary in a cinematic moment of acknowledgement and unspoken power. Marcus Carter stepped closer to Samuel, his presence calm but commanding, the sunlight now dipping lower, casting long, soft shadows across the pavement and highlighting the contours of the street and the worn texture of the sidewalks. The gentle hum of distant traffic blending with the faint chatter of pedestrians who had paused at the edges, their attention drawn to the quiet exchange unfolding in the center of the block. And Samuel adjusted the small paper bag in his hand, a subtle gesture of grounding, his fingers brushing against the smooth metal tucked beneath his jacket lining, a weight both literal and symbolic, reminding him of the years of service and integrity carried in every step. And as Marcus's gaze met his, there was a quiet understanding, a recognition of endurance and steadfastness that needed no words. The warmth of the afternoon sun washing over both men, reflecting off the windows of nearby storefronts, the gentle movement of leaves in a breeze adding a soft texture to the air, while Officer Ryan Cole shifted his stance, awareness of the depth of experience before him pressing quietly on his posture, his eyes flicking involuntarily to the metal glinting faintly beneath Samuel's jacket, a subtle sign of acknowledgement, of respect beginning to seep into his perception. And Samuel exhaled slowly, the motion deliberate and measured, the rhythm of his breathing steady, a controlled cadence that carried years of discipline, patience, and quiet authority. The gentle rise and fall of his chest reflecting the calm that emanated from him, while the city around them continued its muted rhythm, the distant hum of a bus, the faint bark of a dog, the soft shuffle of feet along the sidewalk forming a living backdrop that accentuated the stillness and intensity of the encounter. And Marcus extended a hand toward the metal, not to touch but in acknowledgement, a silent affirmation of the honor it represented, the life it symbolized, a gesture so understated yet powerful, resonating with the depth of shared understanding, the street seeming to hold its breath, the long shadows of late afternoon stretching across the asphalt and weaving between the buildings, framing the two men in a cinematic tableau of dignity, experience, and unspoken connection. and Samuel's gaze softened, a subtle nod of recognition and gratitude, acknowledging not just his son's presence but the support, the quiet understanding, the layered history represented in the moment. While Officer Cole's shoulders relaxed imperceptibly, the tension of assumed authority giving way to a tentative respect, the sunlight glinting off the edges of the patrol car, the folds of his uniform, the soft shimmer of badges and medals reflecting a world he had not fully comprehended until now. And the city carried on around them, ordinary in sound and movement, yet elevated by the extraordinary calm and dignity present in the shared space. Samuel adjusted his stance once more, grounding himself with the familiar weight of the bag in his hand, the metal pressing lightly against his chest, a tactile reminder of decades of integrity and patience. Marcus standing beside him, the gentle tilt of his head, the precise alignment of his posture, all silently communicating support and acknowledgement, a reinforcement of the authority rooted not in volume or intimidation but in measured, lived experience. And the air between the three men was charged not with confrontation, but with a profound understanding, a layered respect that transcended the ordinary street scene. The sunlight catching the edges of the buildings, the cracks in the sidewalk, the subtle shine of distant windows, highlighting every small detail as if the world itself was pausing to witness the affirmation of honor, endurance, and quiet strength. And in that suspended moment, Samuel Carter's presence, the acknowledgement of his son Marcus, and the tentative awareness of Officer Cole combined to form a tableau of integrity and human connection, every micro-movement, every shift in posture, every glance contributing to a narrative of recognition, patience, and enduring dignity that resonated far beyond the ordinary rhythm of the city. The warm light of the setting sun bathing the scene in a golden glow, each element perfectly aligned to emphasize the power of calm authority, respect, and the quiet, unspoken communication between generations and lives defined by steadfast values, creating a cinematic stillness that encapsulated the full weight of honor, resilience, and moral clarity. The late afternoon sun continued its slow descent, casting long, mellow shadows across the cracked pavement and stretching between the buildings, the warm golden light illuminating the folds of Samuel Carter's jacket and catching the subtle silver threads in his hair, while the city around them carried on with its gentle rhythm, the distant hum of tires on asphalt, the soft murmur of pedestrians in conversation, and the faint coo of a bird overhead blending into a calm, ambient symphony that framed the moment. And Samuel adjusted the paper bag in his hand, a small, grounding motion that connected him to the ordinary world even as the extraordinary presence of his son Marcus Carter beside him transformed the street into a tableau of quiet power and dignity. Marcus's stance relaxed yet commanding, his eyes surveying the scene with the practiced calm of someone accustomed to high-stakes decisions and subtle communication, every movement precise, deliberate, yet understated, a silent acknowledgement of the history and resilience embodied by Samuel, the metal beneath his jacket catching the final rays of sunlight, a glimmer of earned honor reflecting briefly into the eyes of all who watched, while Officer Ryan Cole shifted his weight, the awareness of authority not absolute, but tempered by recognition and understanding beginning to settle over him, the tension easing imperceptibly as the weight of experience, patience, and silent strength became apparent, and Samuel exhaled. Slowly, a controlled breath that radiated calm, assurance, and quiet authority, his gaze sweeping the street one last time, noting the textures of the worn sidewalks, the faint cracks in the crosswalk, the subtle undulations in the pavement, each detail a reminder of the world he had walked, endured, and understood in full, while Marcus's presence beside him reinforced the gravity and depth of the moment, a shared recognition that transcended words, a communication of respect, legacy, and moral clarity. The golden light casting long, cinematic shadows, the warm tones highlighting the soft edges of buildings and the subtle shimmer of the patrol car. The street around them transformed into a space where ordinary life intersected with profound acknowledgement, and Samuel's posture, steady and composed, the slight lift of his chin, the careful alignment of his shoulders, projected an unshakable dignity that required no reinforcement, no spoken declaration, just the quiet resonance of a life well lived. While Marcus's eyes remained on the street, calm, measured, lending a subtle, stabilizing presence, the surrounding pedestrians sensing the conclusion of an unspoken narrative, their movements slowed, their voices softened, the city folding around them in respectful pause, and Officer Cole stood quietly, his own posture relaxed now, the rigidity of assumed authority replaced by tentative understanding, the final recognition of a presence both ordinary and extraordinary, a quiet power that needed no demonstration beyond its being, and Samuel finally allowed his gaze to soften, a subtle nod toward his son, a shared acknowledgement of endurance, wisdom, and quiet triumph. The warm sunlight bathing them both, shadows stretching, light reflecting off every surface, the metal resting against Samuel's chest as a final, unseen testament to a life of service, patience, and integrity. The street, the air, the gentle movement of distant pedestrians, and the soft, ambient city sounds combining to frame this moment as a cinematic stillness, a tableau of dignity, quiet, victory, and unspoken acknowledgement, the ordinary and extraordinary perfectly aligned in harmony. Every detail of the urban landscape and subtle gesture working together to conclude the encounter with profound, silent resonance, leaving Samuel Carter standing with calm authority, Marcus Carter beside him, and Officer Cole transformed quietly by the presence and history before him, the late sun casting a golden glow over the street, illuminating the textures, shadows, and depth of character in a scene that spoke louder than words ever could, the city continuing its rhythm around them as the three figures stood in an unbroken, silent testament to honor, endurance, and the enduring power of presence.